Booyah, and it's time for the Game Sports Show, the Twin Sault's only local, regional, and national sports show. And we're here inside ONNtv studios. It is your host, David McCaig, getting ready for another action-packed edition of the Game Sports Show. And you may be listening to the show via our podcast, our new website, throughout our social media platforms, throughout here on TV, or through YouTube. Either way, we're very happy that you're able to join us for yet another edition of the Twin Sault's only local, regional, national sports show, the Game Sports Show. Don't hesitate to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, which is under @the-Game Sports Show. And to get with and started with the show, we typically don't like to start the show as such, but obviously the biggest news that's come up in sports and recent that I can recall, on Sunday the world lost an NBA legend and a great person in Kobe Bryant. At 41 years old, Kobe Bryant was a complete NBA absolute legend. He had over 33,000 points, 5-time NBA champion, 18-time All-Star, 2008 MVP, 15-time All-NBA team, and 12-time NBA All-Defense. And as you can see on the graphic right now, some videos with Kobe Bryant, he was one among 9 individuals whom passed away in the helicopter crash. And obviously, being a sports fan like myself and much of everybody others, this shocked the world. And among those others that passed away, the victims, there was obviously Kobe, Gianna Bryant, John Altobelli, who was an Orange Coach College head baseball coach, Carrie Altobelli, which is John's wife, Alyssa Altobelli, which is the daughter of the coach and Gianna's basketball teammate, Sarah Chester, Peyton Chester, Christina Mauser, and Aria Zoban was the pilot in the crash. And this obviously, everyone that was involved in that disaster, in that tragedy, it was just as important as Kobe was, obviously, to the world. And we are here at the Game Sports Show, send our condolences to the Bryant family, friends, and relatives of the Bryant family, just friends overall of the Altobelli family, and everyone else that was involved in that tragic crash. And obviously, this was reported first on Sunday morning, and after that, it was just all over social media with a lot of posts and quotes from a lot of news. And it seemed really fake and surreal. I could not believe it. And to jump into with Kobe Bryant, his effect on the world, and from a basketball perspective and a sports perspective, he is a legend. And there's a true leader on and off the court. And I'll never stop saying Kobe when I shoot something into the trash or whenever I'm playing basketball with my friends, family, or any kind of game, even playing in a video game nonetheless. I will always be saying Kobe when I shoot that shot. And I remember Kobe getting his 81 points against the Toronto Raptors. I can remember him winning the 5 NBA championships that he won, doing it with and without Shaquille O'Neal. And at the end of the day, this was a true basketball player who got 60 points in his final game as an NBA starter, and in his final game before going into retirement. And overall, Kobe Bryant had an effect throughout the whole world. I was shook, deeply saddened, as well as everybody else was, just because even if you don't feel like you met or know somebody, Kobe had such a huge part on our lives and everyone else's life, despite if you knew him as a person or watched him or just even read about him in sports articles. Nonetheless, this was somebody that was followed heavily and was a true role model in the game of basketball. And this comes just a day after LeBron James passed him for 3rd all time. And this was something with Kobe Bryant that there will never be a basketball player like Kobe Bryant was. And despite LeBron being at the threshold that he's at, Michael Jordan, a lot of legends that played, the effect that Kobe Bryant, he has 2 jerseys in the rafters at the Staples Center. And a lot of the quotes that we are reading online from LeBron James, which was completely heartfelt, Shaquille O'Neal, amongst much more that I haven't really mentioned here. And obviously at the Grammys on Sunday was absolutely fantastic in terms of the tribute towards Kobe Bryant and really heartfelt. And it was a very emotional day in the world of sports and just overall worldwide. And one thing that I really touched heart yesterday was Jimmy Fallon. I must give a special shout out to Jimmy Fallon for standing up and giving him a 3-minute tribute. You can check out his upload for what he had, the beer run story with Kobe Bryant. And that was something that really hit home. Despite not knowing Kobe, you could see the kind of person that he was. And overall, Kobe, we have nothing but to say thank you for what you've done for the NBA and just overall in the world. And there's one thing I'll say before we go to our first break and get into the hockey side and more sports talk here on the Game Sports Show, is that there's already a petition in place to change the NBA logo to Kobe. And we'll discuss this more throughout the week as we have more time, but I say this could be something that we should do. I would love to see this for Kobe Bryant. Now, I want to give a special quote here before we go to our break and before we go to our moment of silence, our 24 seconds of moment of silence. The most important thing is to try and inspire people so that they can be great in whatever they want to do. Kobe Bryant said that heroes come and go, but legends never die. And that's what I see with Kobe Bryant. Now let's have a moment of silence before we go to our break. Welcome back to the Game Sports Show. Getting ready for part 2 of tonight's edition of the Game Sports Show inside ONNtv Studios, the Twin Sault's only local regional national sports show, the Game Sports Show. And as that header just said, we got some hockey talk here on the game, except it's with Dave, but not with Alex. We got Dane Hantrow making his debut on TV for the Game Sports Show. Daner, welcome to the TV side of things, my friend.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me. It's probably my biggest moment of 2020 thus far. So, yeah, I'm excited to get things rolling.
You got your shirt on. You got your hair done up nice.
I probably should have got a haircut before I came, but yeah, I'll let the flow go for at least one show and then maybe look a little bit more professional the next show.
No, you look good.
Little nice haircut.
You look good. And there's one thing that's different that we do on the TV side that on the podcast radio side. We have a big thing when we do our show that notes are not a thing. That's one rule that I enforce. But obviously on TV, we got to make sure that we follow something.
Absolutely.
So we don't random off and branch off to many different topics. But obviously we started the show obviously with the depressing kind of start, obviously. So try to get the listeners and the viewers and everyone back engaged here. We got a lot of hockey talk here, okay? We're going to talk about the All-Star game. We're even going to give a brief mention about the AHL All-Star game. We're going to talk about the game in terms of MVP, some what we thought, some events. And then we got our trade target board. We don't want to call it the trade bay board or anything of such because those names are taken. The deadline target board. It'll be the Game Sports Show's deadline target board that Day and I and everyone here on the Game Sports Show came together with. Canadian team deadline target boards, as well as teams that are selling, in particular Canadian teams that they can last for the rest of the regular season, the playoffs. Lots and lots to get to. Be a couple segments of this. So Dane, to get it all started, let's start with the AHL. The
Perfect.
AHL with Martin Franck. 109.2.
Yeah.
Wild. Was there enhancements in that stick? There's no way that guy can shoot harder than Shea Weber or Zdeno Chara.
I mean, I think, you're looking at players these days, they're obviously, bigger, stronger, faster with, all the development and the money that goes towards, training kids and just everything that goes with being an NHLer these days. So, yeah, I mean, but what's the record going to be in 10 years from now, Are we going to be getting in the 120s maybe, down the road? So, yeah, I mean, 109 to beat Zdeno Chara with all the leverage that he has being, 6'9" or whatever that he is. Very impressive. Martin Franck, actually, he's been a perennial 20-goal scorer in the AHL. He has 3 goals in 4 games for LA this year. So maybe, kind of like a low-level target maybe at the deadline for a team that might need a guy on the wing on the power play to put a couple pucks in that. Guy can obviously shoot the pucks. So, very impressive anyways.
Yeah, but you know what I see, look at last year with Anthony Greco, which is funny for us to say, especially as we have a friend of ours named Anthony Greco. Guy who plays hockey in the American Hockey League passed Connor McDavid last year. Obviously, we had Matt Barzal pass McDavid this year in terms of his speed. But you've seen a lot of these in the AHL games. You got the hardest shotgun beat there now, the fastest skater, a lot of things like that. And you got the women's that were involved in the NHL All-Star game, which is great to see. But the AHL has definitely gotten a lot of people's attention with their skills comp because those guys are wiring pucks, obviously, and being absolute snipers. But going into the NHL All-Star game, the Pacific And you're an Edmonton Oilers fan. Anyone who follows the show on the podcast, broadcast, live radio side knows that Dane is a Edmonton Oilers fan, and yours truly is a Toronto Maple Leaf fan. So we'll make sure that we try to stay out of it so it doesn't get too heated up here nonetheless. But Connor McDavid in the Pacific Division, actually I should say the Draisaitl-Tkachuk connection in the Pacific Division against Mitch Marner and the Anderson and the Atlantic win the finals. That was actually a very exciting 3 games. Like, goalies were trying in that.
Yeah.
Defensively, people were back checking. It was very high intensity, actually.
Yeah, I think a common complaint with obviously the All-Star game is, it doesn't really mean a whole lot to, the standings where it's comparable to baseball. Obviously, with league wins, obviously gets the home field advantage in the World Series. So I think there was probably pressure from the league and on the players, maybe go out there and play a little bit, right?
Extra.
And it's unfortunate that guys like, Alexander Ovechkin don't want to go. I mean, whatever what you think about that, I think the guys maybe earned not being able to go there. But yeah, I think there's a lot of exciting things about the All-Star game this year. I think, adding the women's event to the All-Star game is really good for women's hockey. I think the stage and the platform that the NHL can provide for them can really help them out with, starting to get a little bit more fans and stuff. And if you watch them play, they were awesome. Like the speed, I think, comparable to 20 years ago, the girls' hockey has got a lot closer to the men's as far as skill and speed
especially.
And my God, those girls can skate and they can pass the puck. And I honestly, I think 3-on-3 really shows off their skills too. So
it does. And it was an intense game, that female.
Yeah,
game.
2-1. Oh, you knew Canada versus US.
Oh, they were going.
Doesn't matter what the stage is. Those girls want to win that game. So yeah, that was I think obvious. My favorite addition to the All-Star game was the women's getting to play in it.
Obviously, Lila Anderson, you have it even written down. Got to interview the Blues players and call them out, right? And that obviously she was a big part. She's a big Blues fan. Obviously, they give her a lot of credit for the part of their big Stanley Cup win. Obviously, just being that super fan and that everything for them, which is such a touching story with her and with her calling out the Blues like Perron. Calling out O'Reilly, Bennington, calling out the guys.
Yeah, and Pietrangelo. Honestly, I think it's almost her calling, just the excitement and the energy that she brought to calling them out. And I mean, the Blues have been under the spotlight NHL-wise for, the last year with their huge comeback coming from last place until winning the Stanley Cup, and then obviously Layla being really a big part of the hockey team, and now hosting the All-Star game. So it's been a lot of St. Louis Blues right now, and I think another touching moment obviously. Yeah. It's really nice to see that she's still kind of part of the team and gets to do fun stuff like that. So yeah, class organization, class act all around for the players to top management for the St. Louis Blues.
Nonetheless, they are a favorite to repeat this year too.
They're looking good. They're looking good.
They're looking pretty good. Now, after the All-Star game comes back to the realization that there's still hockey to be played from 33 to 37 games remaining for teams around that area, give or take. And yesterday, Monday, was when games started kicking back in. And obviously, just a little special shout out here to Leafs here. Rasmus Sandin got his first career NHL goal yesterday. Goal and assist. The guy was actually a force. Yesterday.
Yeah, I got to actually catch a little bit of the game last night, and I mean, it's hard to see Rasmus Sandin playing another game in the AHL until maybe for the rest of his career the way that he's playing. I just think that he's brought a lot to the Leafs defensively, and obviously they've been really hurt with Muzzin and Riley going down, and he's fit in effortlessly. So I'm happy to see him score. I'm obviously not the biggest Leafs fan, but any former Greyhound having success in the NHL is always a good thing to see.
And Anderson, that was one thing that was worried that I got to say. He stood on his head yesterday, and he did the same in the All-Star game. He robbed your number one, Connor McDavid, and supporting the CN Tower pads. And obviously he's a huge part in Toronto's success down the stretch. That's the most obvious thing that I can say on the show here today. And they played really well yesterday. And I'm usually one to point out that there was less minutes on CC and Marincin wasn't in the lineup. Which, when you had Sandin started piling up the minutes, and Muzzin looked good in his return.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into our trade bait board. Obviously, the Leafs are 2 points behind a playoff spot. There's a lot of teams that are out on both sides of the conferences, and there's teams that are in. It's very tight this year, obviously. And for teams to get improved, they got to target those areas. The Leafs, for instance, have a backup goalie need. Yes, I should just say yes, they need that. And defense. The biggest priority for them to be successful in the playoffs is defense. And obviously, we have our trade bait board, our deadline target board that I'd like to call it, and there it is on the graphic right there. We're going to get into this a little bit, then we're going to go to break and come back to talk more. But names on this list: Chris Kreider, Matt Dumba, Shane Gottisbehere, Alec Martinez, Tyler Toffoli. You got one of the Chicago goalies, Crawford or Leonard. Will Jesse Puljujarvi get moved? And as I was speaking about Toronto, you know that they're looking at Matt Dumba, they're looking at Brendan Dillon, they're looking at trying to make these moves. You even got some Leafs that could even be on the trade bait board. Kasperi Kapanen, Kerfoot, or Andres Janssen. Carolina's first round pick has been tossed around. I even think that Edmonton has been rumored to even they would maybe throw a first round pick out of there to get the right player, because you never know. It might be a trade that you can think of the 2020 or be the 2021 draft, sorry. And a lot of moves and a lot of picks might be moved here, but this isn't the most flashy NHL trade deadline that we've seen, but there's still a lot of good players available.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this year you're going to see a lot more hockey deals, as they say, rather than seeing draft picks and prospects going around. And the reason for that being is a lot of teams are up against the cap. And I mean, if you look at all the Canadian teams, unless you're, Montreal or Ottawa, I mean, Vancouver has like 30 grand left on the cap. Edmonton and Calgary have about $1 million. Toronto has to have about $0. Negative. So,
million. Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have to move cap out to get a player. So, like, as a hockey deal, I mean, a trade like, to say Adam Larson for maybe Janssen or Kapanen, straight up, they make about just as much the same as salary. I think the Larson's about $4 and a half, so it's about $1 million difference. Yeah. But I think you're going to see a lot more NHLers, moving for other NHL pieces because of teams being up against the cap. You got to move cap to bring in cap. So
the team that had cap this year that already made a big splash was the Arizona Coyotes, bringing in Taylor Hall, obviously, who you know pretty well in Edmonton. And Arizona's looking like a really good. They've been having first round picks and high picks for the last decade plus. Ever since good old Jeremy Roenick hasn't been on the squad, a lot of the names that they had a good run with Mike Smith once in the playoffs. This is a team that's begging to have that hockey there back, and having Kessel there, Taylor Hall. They have a good little nucleus of players in Arizona. But there's teams that are on the outside that we know are going to be sellers that we're going to talk about a little bit. But names that we're talking about on this list in particular: Chris Kreider, Matt Dumba. Mike Green was one that I wanted to throw on there. The guy has under 10 points in 40 games this year. He's a veteran.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's a list again of names. And Mike Green's a right-hand shot defenseman, veteran guy, who has strong offensive presence that could be a threat on a team that I want to see, like maybe the Pittsburgh Penguins, another team that wants up to the cap. You got a lot of cap issues with a lot of teams. Like you said, hockey deals are certainly going to be evident. And Dane, you and I are going to get more into some potential deals with Canadian teams. You and I are going to take a break.
Excellent.
And when we come back, we'll talk more hockey here on the Game Sports Show. Welcome back to the Game Sports Show, part 3 of tonight's show inside ONNtv Studios. Dave McCaig still joined. I shouldn't say rejoined. Either way, Dane Hantrow still doing his TV debuts. You're still here with great hair and nice outfit for your debut. Nonetheless, we have more trade deadline to talk, and we're going to have a full trade deadline preview and review show that we do all the time on the Game Sports Show. But right now, it's the perfect time to start talking about it, because it's really at the point where teams are deciding if they're sellers, buyers, if they want to make that run, especially if you're a team on the bubble right now, like Toronto on the outside looking in, if you need to make those improvements. And we talked about guys that are on our deadline target board list. And one name that obviously sticks out, Chris Kreider. And we can't go through every name because we don't have the time, but we'll go through a couple names here, quickly say where we think we're going to go and where they would benefit and potentially even return, Dane. Like Chris Kreider. What do we think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the Pacific Division. I think Calgary, who was an offensive juggernaut last year, has their offense has completely disappeared. So I would look at the Flames and Edmonton, who obviously are looking for forwards too, would be two teams that would be looking at Chris Kreider. I mean, even throw Vancouver in there. It's whether between they want defense or defense or offense right now is I'm not sure, because they're pretty much even between the both. So yeah, I kind of foresee Chris Kreider heading to the Pacific Division. I mean, maybe Vegas goes after them. There's a 1-point difference between 5 teams there. So if you're looking for a division to make some noise come trade deadline, I would be looking at that division for sure.
With Chris Kreider, I got 2 teams in mind: Boston Bruins, St. Louis Blues. Keeping it simple, keeping it easy here. Boston is another team that I said on the show that even look at Joe Thornton. I think Joe Thornton will be traded this year, and he wasn't on our board, unfortunately, but because he isn't the same player that he was, but leadership-wise, Kreider, I think, is a potential better fit for the St. Louis Blues. I think he just fits that scheme. They can make room under the cap with trading and make a good hockey deal, if you will. So I got to say that Chris Kreider would be a good fit there in St. Louis. We'll do a couple more before we go on to our next point. I want to go to Matt Dumba. Now, this is somebody that isn't on everybody's board, and I'll start with this saying that the perfect fit, very simple, is in Toronto. I'm saying it right now. It's a 25-year-old defenseman who's locked up for 4 years. The term salary is good, but the Leafs are going to have to give up a lot to get this. Timothy Lindgren, Janssen, and they're going to have to move money, which is Cody Ceci out just for the rest of this year, and Minnesota can eat up the rest of that money, and because he's going to go to free agency anyways. That'll give the Leafs over almost $3 million of extra cap room after making that trade, which can bring in room to help bring in another defenseman or another goalie. So I think that's the type of trade, and that's why he's on our board, because there's teams that can make these hockey deals, much like the Oilers, which I don't think they're looking for defensemen as much, but type of deals like this where you see teams make hockey deals, the Oilers, Vancouver, and Toronto, but I think Dumba's best fit would be in Toronto.
Yeah, I mean, Toronto would have to make a couple, a lot of moves to make that trade happen. I mean, the Winnipeg Jets, if we're going to kind of stay on the Canadian team trend, not having Dustin Byfuglien is obviously hurting them immensely this year. So I think, but I think they really need to figure out if Byfuglien's coming back or not, because I think they obviously still own his contract, and that cap hit is if he does come back. I mean, and they bring in a $5 million defenseman, well then he can't come back at all because there's no room for him, right? Yeah. So I think, logistically, the Jets, they got a lot going on in Winnipeg right now, but I see a pretty good fit in there. I would think the Florida Panthers, who they can score 100 goals a game, but they can't keep the puck out of the net. So I think that's a team that would look for some defensive help, who's right in the mix, obviously, in Toronto's division in the Atlantic, which is, I mean, almost just as competitive as the Pacific right now, with a lot of really good teams battling for playoff positions. So I think, and Toronto, if they can make it happen. So I think those 2 or 3 teams would be interested in Matt Dumba for sure.
Last guy we'll bring up quickly before we go to our point, to make it quick and brief. If you had to bring up one team or fit in terms of Tyler Toffoli, who obviously is being tossed around with LA.
Yeah, I think Tyler Toffoli, with his cap hit, I think he would be a good fit for any team that's looking for offense in general. I think he's a UFA next year, UFA next year. So he would be a complete rental player. That being, rental player. So if teams are interested in doing that, I know I've heard a lot of GMs kind of specify that they're looking for more of a hockey deal where they want to trade for guys that still have term left on their contract, but. So I could see Tyler Toffoli. He hasn't been, as offensively productive in the last, 2 years compared to his, I think he had a 30-goal campaign about 2-3 years ago. So what's it going to take to get him? You see guys go for first-round picks, and you're like, oh my God, like how is he worth that? So Tyler Toffoli, I think, can go for anywhere for a first or a second-round pick. And I mean, again, the Pacific Division with the Flames, Oilers, and Canucks, I think would all be good fits for Tyler Toffoli.
I'd say for Tyler, couldn't agree more. First-round pick. Maybe a lighter prospect, but I see it fit in Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh always makes moves at the deadline, so I would not be
surprised.
One
of these players on our list is going to Pittsburgh.
Going to Pittsburgh.
Someone's going to Pittsburgh. Now, Canadian team-wise for the target board. Now, we know teams that are selling. We're going to get to that next. We'll just be brief on this. Myself, for bringing up teams from the Canadian side that are on the deadline target board. Ilya Kovalchuk, even though he just signed in Montreal. You have Toronto players, 1 of 3 being Kapanen, Kerfoot, and Janssen. Maybe all 3. You have TJ Brodie, Jean-Gabriel Pageau, or Jeff Petrie or Ron Hainsey. I think Canadian teams, with moving these type of players, if you're Montreal, we're going to talk about them if they're going to be sellers or whatnot, but if the Canadian teams, out of all this, they're, like you said, they're hockey deals with all these players, except 1-year UFAs. It's like Ilya Kovalchuk just signed in Montreal, but he's doing well there. Could be a fit on a team that's looking for some high scoring, which, again, like the Pittsburgh Penguins. Is that a place where Brandon Gallagher goes with Kovalchuk? They know they're going to make a move, but I think Kovalchuk will not stay the rest of the year in Montreal. That's one that sticks out to me.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see Montreal trading Brendan Gallagher. He's kind of a heart and soul guy on that team. He's still pretty young. I don't know if it's kind of the time of his career to move him. Maybe it is. I'm not sure what Marc Bergevin thinks half the time. He does.
He makes moves.
He makes moves. He makes noise. So. Yeah. I don't see anything different at the trade deadline. I feel like, if you could trade anyone from Carey Price to Ilya Kovalchuk.
Well, he says Weber and Price are untouchable, but I don't believe anyone's untouchable.
Well, I think their contracts are untouchable. I think there's only so many teams that can bring in $10 million for a goalie, right? So I think Carey Price might even suffer from a little bit of the Luongo issue that he had in Vancouver, where he is getting a little bit of older, and obviously this year he hasn't been the same Carey Price. Can he bounce back next year? Yes, absolutely. He's one of the best goaltenders in the world in the last 20 years. So, I think Montreal is going to make some noise, and we'll see what happens. Kovalchuk's a weird one. They just brought him in, so I mean, it would be kind of weird to see him get traded, but I think Montreal definitely has to look to the future. This is
you got a good value. Why
clearly not this year, and they got really good prospects. So, sell.
So speaking of selling, what teams are selling? We have down Detroit, we have Ottawa, Nashville, New Jersey, and San Jose. Yes, Nashville made this list. Nashville fans, I watched last night as a Leaf fan, watched Toronto's offense and even defense outplay everything with that team. It's like the last 8 minutes where Nashville really came on in that hockey game. But Nashville's at the point where they got to move some guys out. Smith, there's some guys you can move. Turris, Matt Duchene has just 10 goals. Yeah. You got guys who are not scoring goals, guys that are not performing. You can't move Duchene. You're not going to move those contracts. But you can move out some little bit of cap. You got Ryan Ellis, who's been a very attractive. Toronto's been on those rumors too. But you have cap that you can move out of there, and you can restart and replenish the team. Dave Pohl has had very much success with Nashville. So that's what. So a lot of people could be like, why is Nashville on there still early? Maybe it is, but they're one. But obviously the other four that we mentioned are certainly on there.
Yeah, I don't think it's too early for Nashville. I think the GM specified that they have about 4 or 5 games approved to him whether they're going to be sellers or buyers, and that was pre-All-Star break. And I think the loss of the Leafs last night kind of solidified the fact that they're going to be sellers. I think for teams that we don't have on the list currently, you're going to look at teams like Minnesota. I mean, Minnesota has cap issues out there, yin-yang kind of there with Sutter and Parise. And so, they're going to be sellers. I think the LA is obviously going to be sellers. Teams like Rangers. New York, the Rangers are going to be sellers. And I think all those teams have, good veteran guys that, they do carry a heavy cap, but as a rental player, I think, if they can make deals, like I think even Jeff Carter, if they can move that contract, I think he could still be a really good guy on, especially like a team like Pittsburgh that has, Malkin and Crosby that he could play with. If he has somebody else that has that caliber of, skill still, I think, he could still be a very effective player. So, I would look at those other teams, too, to be, for sure, selling players. But again, like I said, so many teams are up against the cap. Maybe we don't see as busy of a trade deadline as we have in the past. So,
and we'll get to more trade deadline as the show goes on. With our show, with our previous show is going to be huge. We do it every year. But our Canadian teams, quickly, we said Ottawa is a seller. Is there any other? Montreal. We said Ottawa, Montreal. But is there any other Canadian team that's actually selling right now, or is that too early to determine?
If you want my expert opinion on the matter, I do think the Winnipeg Jets should sell and live for tomorrow kind of thing. And I'm going to say that is because they play in the toughest division in hockey. I know we argue about this all the time, but I think in the Central, Chicago's still playing pretty decent. They're only about 4 points out of a playoff spot. Then you got, the monsters with St. Louis, Colorado.
Very much looking forward. There's another team we didn't mention a lot being active as buyers. Joe Sakic will buy this year. I'll tell you right now, Joe Sakic's buying.
Well, and if you look at the NHL recently, you don't have to be the first place team to win the Stanley Cup anymore. I mean, it's anybody's game. You just got to get in. So I think, obviously Colorado last year in the playoffs proved that, we're an up-and-coming team. And I think this year, I for sure think Joe Sakic. And I mean, they got so many prospects. I don't think they want to trade Bowen Byram. I don't think they want to trade Connor Timmins, but with having Kyle McCarr come in, and like I've been so big on Kyle McCarr for the last 2 years, and obviously look at what he's done in his first year in the NHL. So I think that obviously makes those other two prospects a little bit disposable if you want to bring in some more offense on that team, or maybe even a 20-minute defenseman that can play hard minutes come playoff time, which I think is just as important as having a good offensive defenseman that can run the power play come playoff time.
We'll see on the Canadian side. My opinion will be that we'll see what happens. Toronto and everything else, we'll see more time into the future. Quickly, because we have to go to break, just one thing to say. Is there a Canadian team that's on the bubble right now that will not make it?
Well, I think you're going to look at the Pacific Division. I mean, I have a hard time seeing Toronto not making it with all the firepower that they have, but I'm this is biased as this might sound. I'm going to say the Calgary Flames. I think the Calgary Flames have very much underachieved, and we're going to beat them tomorrow night. So that's just going to hurt their playoff chances even a little bit more.
The bubble, I will say quickly before we go to break, Montreal, sorry, I don't think this is it. Calgary and Winnipeg, I don't know, but I do believe Toronto and Edmonton will be in the playoffs. You're kind of on the bubble. Sorry, Ottawa, your time will come. Maybe Alexis Lafreniere is waiting for you in the draft. Nonetheless, he's Dane. You made your debut. Thank you, my friend, for coming on.
Thank you.
And we'll have some more coming up next. Alex Parr will be joining me for some local hockey talk here on the Gain Sports Show. Welcome back to the Gain Sports Show. Dave McCaig inside ONNtv Studios here for the Twin Sault's only local, regional, and national sports show, The Game Sports Show. Better be following us on social media, but we also appreciate you watching us on YouTube and everything else as well. But nonetheless, someone who's no stranger to my left. He's got the flu bug and all, and he's still here beside me, powering through it to talk our local segment of the Game Sports Show, more so geared to hockey, of course, tonight. Alex Parr.
I went a little bit more formal than you did today.
You did.
You got a little loose cannon today. No tie on me.
You got the tie. You
Yeah.
got the kind of the Edward Norton kind of look, and I got the Bradley Cooper type look today.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that one.
And nonetheless,
laugh it up.
nonetheless,
Okay.
Unfortunately, you weren't a part of our hockey talk with
Right.
Dane with the NHL. Obviously, you and I will talk about it more in detail on Thursday
yeah.
about things. However, but we got local to jump into here. Okay, and we're gonna get it all going right now. The Sault Greyhounds we're gonna start with. Okay, the Sault Greyhounds went 1-2 last week, with going 1-1 on the weekend. They split the weekend this weekend, losing to Sudbury and winning in North Bay. Now Nick Malik getting his first OHL win, almost slipped there and said another league. Nonetheless, maybe one day, Nick. But nonetheless, let's talk about the Sault Greyhounds, Alex.
Wow, I feel like I almost need to apologize at this point of the year now because I had so much more hope for this team than what I'm seeing on the ice. And I'm not saying that necessarily their performances are bad or they're not playing in these games. It doesn't look like they're hanging in there. Their Flint game that they lost 7-4, they were in there. They tied it up. Joe Carroll had a hat trick, 150th regular season game for him. Ties it up 3-3, end up losing 7-4 with a couple empty netters. That sucks.
Bad start though, right?
They're 4 points back of 8th, and they played one more game than 8th and 7th place, which, if the writing's on the wall, that's pretty bad. They're the first most penalized team in the West. They're the third most penalized team in the whole league. Things don't really seem to be changing. And I mean, it's great for Malik to pick up his first win. That's great for the confidence boost, right? But it's against North Bay. And I mean, I don't really think too many people are thinking the Battalion are admirable adversary for, this year at least. The Hounds, I'm worried for you guys. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs.
See, the big thing is about the OHL is that it's not like the NHL or professional sports where there's a large amount of teams that don't make the playoffs.
Right.
You have 2 teams that don't make it, essentially.
In each conference,
In each conference, so 4 total that don't make it. And you said they're 4 points behind with one game in hand. And these are teams that are 7th, 8th, which they're going to be playing the harder teams. So it's not like they're going to clean house and win those games, you would think. So it's going to be very tight going down the stretch. And the Hounds do have the goaltending with Nick. This is a world junior goaltender. I don't care if anyone says for Czechoslovakia or if or Czech Republic, or Czechoslovakia, whatever country, Kazakhstan.
The Czech Republic.
Nonetheless, you have a goalie who has that capability at 17 years old.
Right. And I mean, Bailey Birkin, before Nick Malik came over, Birkin was playing some really good hockey.
Yeah, he was. And Nick is a very, very talented goaltender. And they have players in place that are very impressive to watch. Constantino, McCaig, and we can talk about the Hounds a lot more. We'll talk more detail from our Northern Superior edition on Thursday. But nonetheless, the Hounds right now, I could not agree with you more, Alex. As much as I want to disagree with you and just argue on here for fun, but nonetheless, the Greyhounds are in a tight spot, and it's going to be very tough to get into those bottom spots, but I hope that they can, because truly they have the talent to do so.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't want to see a year wasted of Cole McKay's career, or Pitlick, or Ryan O'Rourke, the bigger names on the Greyhounds, of course, not making the playoffs, because you can grow so much exponentially more if you get to play in those tough situations, especially if you're playing up against a number 1 seed and you can even snag one game. The things that you did right in those games are going to be so important for your mindset going into the next season. I'm just worried that this season may be wasted for that, and we might not see any playoff hockey in Sault Ste. Marie.
You know what? The Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds have been a very successful organization, and they will continue to be. This year might be, we'll see. But it's going to make it very interesting going down the stretch. So don't hesitate to go to the rink and watch them. Everyone from Sault Ste. Marie. Let's support local. We stress that big on this show. Good to transition now. We've got some more things to get to. We've got a couple minutes before we go to our break. We're going to talk about the LSSU Lakers. They won and tied this past weekend against Alaska Anchorage. This weekend, the Friday, the Lakers are on the road against the U.S. National Under-18 team. Very interesting. LSSU, a season to forget so far for LSSU.
Yeah.
They against U.S. it's going to be, those are younger players than themselves.
Yes.
But it's still going to be a very good game because of the talent that under-18 team has.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't think anybody on the Lake State University Lakers is really going to go, I want my butt kicked by an 18-year-old. I don't think they're going in with that mindset, so I'm sure that's going to be a very competitive hockey game.
It is. The NOJHL now transitioning from NCAA. The Sault Thunderbirds won 2 this past weekend. They actually play tonight, which is Tuesday. They also play Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday this week. 4 games this week for the Thunderbirds. They are packed. Last weekend winning against the Sioux Eagles. And overall, that big game the big games are this weekend. I got really highlighted. I got all the games highlighted, but home and home against the Blind River Beavers.
Right.
That is huge. Sarah on Blind River is one of the top scorers in the CJHL. He's top 3 this year in all of Canada for junior points. Thunderbirds got to keep an eye out for him. Sioux Eagles this past weekend split 1-1. Play this upcoming week 1 game only, which is Friday against Espanola at home. Blind River was 2-0 this past weekend, continuing their strong season, defeating Espanola and Elliott Lake. They are home Friday and Saturday face the Thunderbirds. As I mentioned, a very big game this weekend between those two. And the Sioux College Cougars also this past weekend.
Am I hitting the replay button like I always do?
Just hit the replay button.
Boom. Sioux Cougars won.
I like that. Very good hockey team.
Always.
That program. Nonetheless, I really want to promote their Winter Classic. It's coming around. It's a couple weeks away on the 15th against West Virginia at the Rankin. Make sure you hit us up or hit anyone up on Sioux College. Just reach out to them and you get tickets to that almost sold out event. It's going to be a great time at the Rankin Arena there for their Winter Classic. The Sioux Junior Greyhounds, I want everyone to give them a follow on social media. This is a team that, obviously, Jamie Henderson does a great job with coverage, and also with the Sioux Indians. They also play the Myers AAA team in Lansing this upcoming weekend, do the Sioux Indians midget AAA team. Alex, any final thoughts with local before we go to our break?
No, I think just for the NOJHL, I think what you see is what you get in the Thunderbirds division. I thought for a while the Eagles might kind of give them a run for their money for that 3rd spot. I think what we see is what we're going to get. Thunderbirds in 3rd and the Eagles in 4th.
It definitely seems that way, and it's going to be very exciting playoffs. Oh, it's going to be electrifying. It's going to be amazing for the NOJHL. Just overall, let's hope the Hounds can get there. Let's have some great local hockey, and let's have some great local sports get into play. Some extracurricular games. Either way, go out and enjoy this.
Some sort of game.
Nonetheless, if you want us to talk more in terms of local sports, don't hesitate to contact us on ONNtv or the Game Sports Show if you'd like something promoted that is a local event that we may have not discussed in any of our podcasts, broadcasts, or TV streams. Nonetheless, Alex, thank you for taking the time to come on today. I know it's just one segment. I'm going to miss you. Danny did a great job for his first time. Jamie's about to make his debut on TV. It's a lot of great things here today on the Game Sports Show. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, Jamie will join us for our In the Pocket segment. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Game Sports Show. David McCaig inside On TV Studios for the final part of the Game Sports Show here inside On TV Studios. I appreciate you keeping along with our, as always, action-packed edition of the game and making his debut to On TV. On the TV side of the Game Sports Show, you're no stranger to the show, Jamie. The one and only Jamie Antonello. Jamie, welcome to your TV debut, my friend.
Thanks, buddy. Happy to be here.
Super Bowl week. Yeah, Super Bowl week.
Yeah, man.
You are our main football expert. No offense to Matt Primo and everybody else. You're the guy that's been a part of our family since 2016. You've been involved with the show. In the Pocket started with us outside Sports Center Bar and Grill, which will be there tomorrow at 9:15, just so everyone knows. But we got a Super Bowl this Sunday. And we got the Chiefs, we got the 49ers, we got Mahomes, we got Garoppolo, we got Kelsey who's partying, who wants to continue to party. We got Reed who had a burger and went to sleep. You got Kyle Shanahan who's involved in the Super Bowl. You got some high-octane offense and defense in both games, I guess you could say. I think more so on the Niners side on defense, have the advantage over the Chiefs. But we don't have as much time as we usually do on radio in terms of getting into and chirping each other back and forth, everything. So kind of to jump into talking about the Super Bowl this week, Jamie, give your opinion, your insight. What are we expecting from this Super Bowl this Sunday?
Well, I'll pick up off what you said. Defensively, I think people are kind of sleeping on the Chiefs' defense. And I think Tyrann Mathieu's playing the best football he's played in a long time. Since he was injured his rookie season in Arizona, he's playing lights out. I think Andy Reid is finally happy to get back to that Super Bowl. There's definitely going to be some companies that are reaching out to get him some custom-fit Hawaiian shirts. I know he was a little worried about having that cheeseburger after, but no, I think it's going to be a fantastic Super Bowl. Everybody's been dying to see the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Everybody was pissed last year when the Patriots beat them in overtime. I think it's time that the Chiefs are there. I'm excited to see the Niners there too. I think Jimmy G, that offense, Kyle Shanahan has the experience. I think it's going to be a good game. I think Andy Reid's going to pull off of the stuff that didn't work for him in 2004. Was the last time he was there with the Eagles.
With the Eagles. Donovan McNabb, I think.
Donovan McNabb, absolutely. And Terrell Owens was playing on a broken leg. Like, that was a wild game. And Kyle Shanahan is going to pull off of the epic letdown, the 28-3 loss to the Pats. So, I mean, both of those coaches are probably happy they're not playing the Patriots, so we'll see how it goes against each other.
See, I know we bring up the Falcons and Patriots. I know we have Dane Hancho who's in the back room there, who's on our show, who probably still has nightmares about that game against the Patriots. But nonetheless, Shanahan's back there, and he's a promising coach. Like, this guy's an awesome coach. I love Kyle Shanahan. And he's going to get there more than just this year. You know,
hope so.
And this is something where last week, and I'm not changing my prediction, I said a 35-28 win for the Chiefs is kind of where I went with it. The Chiefs really solving the Niners' defense, because I think Mahomes, for some reason, is going to go Super Saiyan 3. We've already seen him go Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan 2 in this playoffs. Okay, that's the funds I'm going with. He's going Super Saiyan 3 in the Super Bowl, I think.
So you're saying he's going to be like Joe Burrow in this college football semifinal? He's going to account for 8 touchdowns? He threw 5 last week. How much more do you want from the guy?
I know. He's literally, the big thing that I see, well, first off, his girlfriend on Instagram is annoying. I'm sorry.
Yeah, his girlfriend's kind of annoying.
Very annoying, but she loves Patrick. But nonetheless, Patrick, I feel like the Chiefs, there's something about them this year that they're just not going to be defeated. I feel like Jimmy G against Patrick Mahomes, the advantage has to go Patrick Mahomes. There, no offense to Jimmy G.
Quarterback-wise, absolutely. You're 100% right. I think an intriguing matchup is going to be
the tight ends.
Tight ends for sure, but that's the easy one because they're 2 guys. They're very outspoken. They're big characters. Travis is basically playing the same thing like when Jason Kelsey went with the Eagles a couple years ago. Big personality, the same guy. So it's somewhere there. If the Chiefs can stop the run and limit that Niners rushing attack, I honestly don't know if that's going to help them. I think just because Jimmy G's arm is still fresh, he's only thrown 30 passes in 2 playoff games. You look at Kelsey and tight end for the night, Kittle. Brain fart. Kittle's stats comparatively through 2 games, and Kittle has like no catches because they've been running the ball. Mostert's running for 400 yards or whatever in 2 games. So I think it's going to be curious, but I think Shanahan's going to find a way to get Kittle in matchups, but that's going to be a major thing is take away the tight ends. And then, I mean, the tough thing for the Niners defense is if their pass rush can get home, they're going to be okay. If not, the Chiefs have a lot of speed. This can be hard to compete with.
Does the kicking game come in here? I know that's such almost an easy question to be like, hey, is that field goal going to make a difference?
I'm sure it will.
Yeah, but is that an advantage for the Chiefs or Niners in any kind of aspect? Is that going to be a turning point in this game, or do you see this being just a hucking balls down the field, just touchdown after touchdown after touchdown, or are the defense going to hold back? You see a low-scoring, high-scoring game, kicking going to get involved big.
I mean, if you got to base it on return game, I think you got to give the edge to the Chiefs. They just have too much speed in the returners. If you can limit that, if they can make one big play in the return game, things can change.
Yeah.
Kicking-wise, I mean, if you block a kick or if you miss a key field goal, we've seen how that is completely detrimental to teams in Super Bowls. So every point is going to matter. People can every year. Everybody's like, "Oh, it's going to be 48-42. It's going to be a score." Rarely does that happen.
That happened to the Eagles.
It happened with the Eagles and the Patriots, 100%. But more often than not, you get in the 20s to 30s, kind of a little bit lower scoring than people think. I still think it's going to be a great game, but I don't think it's going to be. I don't think we're going to get upwards of 80 total points. I don't think we're going to. I wouldn't be pushing the over as much as people are.
So now I'm going to ask this because before we wrap up our show for tonight. Tomorrow from SportsCenter we got our show.
Yep.
I don't know. Do you want to state your prediction now, or are we saving your prediction for tomorrow?
I think we'll save it for tomorrow.
You're saving it for
Yeah, I
tomorrow.
think-
Oh, a little teaser. You know mine.
I
Everyone knows
know
mine.
who it is. I know who I have, but we'll save that. You got to listen to the podcast.
Yeah, we'll wait and see for Jamie Antonello's prediction for the Super Bowl. Jamie Antonello, obviously a coach for the SaberCats. He's been a coach for the Core Colts. He's been involved with the University of Windsor. He's played football. You are an OFSA champion yourself as a player,
And
I
a coach,
believe.
yeah.
And a NASA, correct? Did you win
Yeah.
NASA? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of accolades does this guy have, and I am very lucky to have him a part of our show's family. Happy you finally made your debut. It was about 8 months, but you know what? You were out of town. Give me the excuse.
I was gone for 5 of
You
those
were,
months, to be
you
fair.
were,
So.
you were. So we'll try to get you on more as we can. We appreciate you coming back, my friend, and coming on for tonight's show.
Happy to be back.
Absolutely. Jamie will be there tomorrow with me from SportsCenter at 9:15. So make sure you tune into that on our podcast, go to all of our media platforms. Quick thumbs up. I'm going to go the thumbs up to everyone who came together in such a hard time for Kobe Bryant. Obviously a thumbs down to the tragedy, but overall the world that has come together in such a tragedy and such a devastating thing in the world of sports, obviously, with Kobe Bryant. And as I mentioned, we will be at SportsCenter tomorrow at 9:15. I'm Dave, he's Jamie. On behalf of everyone else here on the Game Sports Show and on TV, including Jacob Moore, Alex Parr, and the one and only Dane Hantrow, we appreciate you stopping in, tuning in, whatever it may be. And I want to remind everyone to have a great night. And until next time, booyah.